Now, the rest of the story. Carl Smith had been running to make the train. He was tired when finally he got settled in his compartment. This was 1930. These were the glory days of train travel. Clean, comfortable, dependable, even elegant. The Southern Pacific Railroad was a pleasure to ride. Carl had boarded the train in Portland, Oregon, his destination San Francisco. His luggage put away, his feet up, Carl fell asleep. Well, the first call to dinner was chimed with real chimes, as was the second call, and the last call, but Carl slept through them all. When he finally awakened, he looked at his watch, and it was clearly too late for dinner, and Carl had not had a thing to eat all day. Perhaps there was a chance. Maybe something cold in the galley might serve him, so Carl hurried from his compartment through the train toward the dining car. Nobody there. Disappointed, he turned to leave, and a voice stopped him. "A moment, sir. May I help you?" Well, even after the long supper sittings, the waiter looked fresh and immaculate, and Carl asked if there was something, anything, left in the galley which he might eat, and the waiter smiled and said he would see, and he returned seconds later still smiling and seated the hungry traveler. Carl expected a cold sandwich, for which he would have been most grateful, but what he received instead, and remarkably promptly, was a full warm meal complete with delicious piping hot biscuits. Now, Carl knew a little bit about cooking, enough to realize you can't just make biscuits in so little time. First, the cook has to mix the dough and the lard, the flour, the baking powder, the salt. That meant measuring, blending, sifting, kneading. All of that before the actual cooking. Unquestionably, the rail chef had not had enough time to go through that procedure, not properly. So surely these biscuits, warm as they were, would taste terrible, but they were delicious. Carl relished every bite of his meal that evening, and when he was through, he went to the galley to thank the cook. He figured what had happened was that somebody on the railroad staff had been sitting down to dinner when Carl walked into the dining car. Maybe that employee had sacrificed his own hot meal. But no, that was not so. The dinner had been prepared especially for him. But how, Carl asked, had those biscuits been cooked so deliciously and so quickly? And that's when the chef related the rest of the story. That this was not the first time a passenger had come to dinner late. It happened often, in fact. So the cook had devised an expedient. He pre-mixed the lard and the flour and the baking powder and the salt in their proper proportions, and he put those blended ingredients already kneaded into the galley's ice chest. Then when the need arose, the chef just removed a little bit of the mix and baked it. Until that November night in 1930, nobody ever asked how the cook had baked his biscuits so quickly, but Carl Smith asked. And Carl was a sales executive for the Sperry division of General Mills. Don't get ahead of me now, but you can look it up in the history books. And it is Carl Smith who is credited with inspiring the first ever packaged, prepared bake mix called Bisquick. But in 1930, somewhere working for the Southern Pacific Railroad, there was a chef who deserves that distinction, because now you know the rest of the story.